You know, before Bruce Lee, before Jackie Chan, there was one man who literally built the blueprint for the modern martial arts movie. And chances are, you might not even know his name. Today, we're diving into the story of the genre's true, unsung architect, Jimmy Wang Yu.
I mean, think about it. When you think of Kung Fu legends, who pops into your head? Bruce Lee? Jackie Chan, right? Of course. But what if I told you the entire genre as we know it was really forged by someone else? A superstar who came before them and basically set the stage for everything that came after.
We are talking about Jimmy Wang Yu. He was this trailblazing actor and director who got so frustrated with the studio system that he did something that was, well, unthinkable at the time. He broke his contract, told his bosses to take a hike, and single-handedly created a whole new kind of action film.
So, the big question is, why isn't he a household name? That's the first thing we gotta unpack here. How did the king of Kung Fu become so unsung?
Well, it really just comes down to some seriously bad historical timing. His prime was right after the classic wuxia, the swordplay movies, and just before Bruce Lee completely exploded on the world scene. He was the crucial bridge connecting those two eras. And, like a lot of bridges, he kind of gets driven over and forgotten.
To really get why he became such a rebel, first we have to look at how he rose to fame in the first place. Because, for a while, he was the undisputed biggest star of the swordsman era.
And his rise was fast, like really fast. He was discovered in 1966 by the absolute legend director Chang Che at the famous Shaw Brothers studio. He got cast in a few movies right away, but it was 1967 when everything, and I mean everything, changed with a film called One-Armed Swordsman.
And look, One-Armed Swordsman wasn't just a hit. It was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It completely shattered box office records. It was the very first Hong Kong film to ever cross the $1 million mark. In an instant, Jimmy Wang Yu became the biggest action star in all of Asia.
But here's the thing. Being the biggest star in the game, it wasn't enough. Wang Yu wanted more, and that deep dissatisfaction is what turned him into a true rebel. A rebel who would go on to create an entire genre from scratch. So here's the kicker. Even with all the money he was making for the studio, he was stuck on a fixed salary. He had zero creative control. The studio basically wanted to keep him in a box. He even wrote a script himself, The Chinese Boxer, and they told him, nah, stick to the sword movies. So what did he do? He tore up his contract and walked right over to their biggest rival. Unheard of.
And with his very first movie as a director, 1970's The Chinese Boxer, he didn't just bend the rules of wuxia cinema, he threw the whole rule book in the fire. Gone were the elegant swords, replaced by brutal, bare fists. The old codes of chivalry? Swapped out for raw, ugly revenge. Fantasy elements? Nope. Gritty reality. And the heroes weren't noble warriors in a group anymore. They were angry, vengeful lone wolves.
This act of rebellion wasn't just a one-off. It was him creating the very formula, the DNA that would define Kung Fu movies for decades. He didn't just make a different kind of movie, he invented a whole new language for action cinema.
Let's break that down, starting with the hero. Before Jimmy Wang Yu, your typical hero was someone like Wang Fei Hung, a wise, patient Confucian master who fought for moral duty. Wang Yu's heroes? The total opposite. They were angry, solitary brawlers driven by nothing but pure revenge. And their training montages weren't about self-improvement. They were about turning their bodies into literal engines of destruction.
This whole vibe was rooted in a concept called Yangang, which is basically this super staunch, tough guy masculinity. And this was a huge shift from wuxia films, which often had really powerful female heroes. In Wang Yu's world, it was all about men on a mission of vengeance. Female characters were pushed way to the side. Their main job was basically to patch the hero up so he could get back to fighting.
But okay, this right here, this might be his single greatest innovation. The style versus style showdown. He was the one who started pitting Chinese Kung Fu against a whole menu of international fighting styles. And this wasn't just cool to watch, it was genius, because it tied a hero's fighting skill directly to national pride. Suddenly, the hero wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for the honor of China.
So you've got this new hero, this revenge plot, this style versus style setup, all these ingredients, and in 1972, he put them all together in what is basically his masterpiece. It was his creative victory lap. The film was One-Armed Boxer, and a critic once described it as maximalist auto fan fiction, which is just
The most perfect description ever. It's literally him taking the character he made famous, the one-armed swordsman, breaking him free from the studio that owned him, and just dialing everything up to 100 on his own terms.
And the story itself became the template. You can probably picture it. Step 1. The hero gets totally crushed and mutilated by a bunch of foreign villains. Step 2. He retreats and puts himself through absolute hell. Brutal, self-imposed training to harden his body. And then, Step 3. He comes back as this unstoppable force to get his methodical and very violent revenge.
This brutal formula, it left a legacy that was deep, indelible, and often really painful. It shaped all the action stars who came after him, and you can still see its influence in movies today.
I mean, just think about Jackie Chan. So much of his appeal comes from watching him suffer on screen, right? He learned that from Wang Yu. But there's a really interesting difference. For Wang Yu's heroes, the pain is self-imposed. It's a choice you make to become a weapon. For Jackie Chan, the pain is usually inflicted on him by somebody else, like a cruel teacher. The DNA is there, but it evolved.
And his influence is still alive and kicking. That whole style versus style format, Chinese kung fu versus foreign martial arts, all to defend national honor, that is the exact formula you see in huge modern hits like the Ip Man series with Donnie Yen. The ghost of Jimmy Wang Yu is everywhere you look.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Jimmy Wang Yu might be the genre's forgotten king, but his fingerprints are all over the crown. I'll leave you with this. The next time you're watching any martial arts movie, look a little closer. Look for the ghost of the one-armed boxer, because he's probably the one pulling the strings.